Wow, what a great class. Awesome.
And they are just so excited about your book. Your book was our #1 choice when we were doing our book trailers for the Bluebonnets that they wanted to read.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear you guys love the trailer for Shadow Weaver and excited for the book. That's so awesome. So happy to hear that. Thank you for reading. That's so great to hear. Did you want to do the Q&A about Shadow Weaver or just generally about writing or being an author?
Yeah, we actually have, we had our 5th graders. They had some questions they wrote. So, who would like to ask a question? So, yeah, go ahead and stand up.
Stand up and be really loud.
What is your main purpose to write the Shadow Weaver?
The main purpose for writing the Shadow Weaver? I'm not sure I can see the purpose behind it so much as I had a really cool idea and I really wanted to play around with that idea and see where it would go. When I got the idea for Shadow Weaver was I've been trying to find a good idea for a book to write for a while. I've been kind of struggling with it. And then one day, it was very late at night, which is often when I get the best ideas is when my mind's kind of wandering and I'm not really focused on getting an idea. It just kind of pops into my head. And it was very late at night and I had 2 images kind of fall into my brain in succession. And the first one was of a child in a bassinet, like a little crib type thing, with a mobile spinning over her head. And it was completely made of shadows. And she had crafted it, was making it move. And I was like, oh, that's really cool, creepy baby. Might be able to do something with that. And then the second image was of a child who's just been born, but instead of reaching for her mother as she should, she's reaching for the shadows in the corner of the room. That kind of sparked the whole idea for the book. And so that was my purpose, I guess, was I really love this idea and this inspiration and wanted to play around with it.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Why does Emmeline run away instead of fighting back?
That's a great question. I think for Emmeline, she feels kind of powerless and like she doesn't have any choices. She feels kind of boxed in. And also, Dar is kind of that little devil on her shoulder who's, telling her, you have to run away, you have to run away. And Dar's her best friend, so she trusts her and trusts what she tells her to do, which may or may not be a good idea, as you'll find out when you read the book. So that was kind of why. She feels like she's boxed in and she's got, Dar pushing her to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What happened to their parents?
Which parents? Emmeline's or
Emmeline.
You find out in the sequel. They stay at home, and you don't see them until the second book again, because she's kind of off doing her own thing. Because they kind of had a sort of strained relationship. She was, they were kind of scared of her a little bit, what she could do, but it was really kind of Dar doing stuff. So, but you'll find out later if you read the second book.
Can when Dar controls shadows, can the shadows actually interact with other things?
So Dar doesn't control the shadows. Dar is a shadow. But Emmeline's shadows, she's the one who controls the shadows. I know it gets a little confusing with all the names. Emmeline, she can control the shadows, and actually throughout the book, she starts working on. And one thing she can kind of do is make them a little bit tangible to her. And she thinks it's only in her that they be tangible. But you find out later on that may not really be the case. Other people may be able to touch them as well, depending on the situation.
And we're going to ask one more question.
What did Dar do to get Emmeline to trust her so much?
She's always been there for her. She's literally been her constant companion since she was a baby. So, someone who's always with her, who played with her, who was there for her when, the other kids didn't want to play with her because she was a little strange. So she's, kind of earned that affection by being, that person who's always, always, always been there for her.
And can you tell us a little bit about your writing process?
So my writing process, it always starts with an idea. That's always the first thing, is I have to have that right idea. And sometimes, like with Shadow Weaver, I get that burst of inspiration. It's kind of like lightning strike, and it's this cool idea that comes through, and I'm like, oh, this is great, I can run with this. And other times, I kind of have to manufacture the inspiration myself. and figure it out. And that's often the case more with sequels, where you've written this first book and then you have to write the second one and figure out the plot. But you don't necessarily get that first inspiration, just kind of figuring it out as you go. So there's two different kinds of writers. There's pantsers and plotters, and I'm a plotter. I love to sit in my writing cave and think about how I can make things really terrible for my characters and then make them better. But authors are kind of evil, where you have to make things really bad for your characters first. So I go through and I have these plotting tools that I use. My favorite one is called Save the Cat beat sheets, and it goes to the 15 story beats that are within a story. And I find it really helps me stay on track when I'm plotting out where the characters are going to go. It helps for character development as well. And I find it really helpful. When I first started writing about 10 years ago, I wrote a lot of practice novels before I got published. Many of them will never see the light of day, which is fine. But my plots were like these long, meandering things, and they didn't really go anywhere, and went off on all kinds of tangents that didn't connect to the main story. It was really fun to play around in the worlds like that and explore, but not so great if you want to publish a story. So now I find these plotting tools that have really helped me keep me on track, so I don't get distracted by shiny plot threads. So once I have this plot figured out, where at the beginning, the middle, and the end, and I've kind of figured out my character and what my character wants and what stands in their way, and that's kind of like the main push and pull of the story, is that you have this main character and they want something, and something is preventing them from getting it. And sometimes that's the antagonist, sometimes it's something in themselves, sometimes it's some other thing standing in their way. And that's kind of how I move that story forward. And then from there, I draft, which is always the hardest part for me. Sometimes drafting is like easy, the words are just pouring out my ears, and other days it feels like pulling taffy from my brain, which can be really difficult. So that's the slowest and longest part for me. But once I have that draft, then is my favorite part, which is revision. And I know a lot of people don't like revision. When I do like in-person school visits, I usually will bring my very first edit letter. You can't really see it very well on this type of a screen, but it's my very first edit letter is 20 single-spaced pages, and I like unfurl it. But it's intense sometimes when you're going through book publishing, the amount of revision that you have to do. But it's to make the book stronger, and if you learn to love it, you can get through it pretty well. Most of my letters are not that long anymore. That was just my first one because I had a lot to learn. So I go through and revise the book on my own a few times usually, and then I'll send it to my editor or my agent, depending on the scenario, and then they take a stab at it. We go back and forth until we're happy with the product. But that's kind of how that process goes. There's a lot of lather, rinse, repeat with revision. And I kind of have in my head this sort of structure of how I go through revision. I usually will start with like macro edits, which is like the big picture. Things like character development, plot things that aren't working, setting, stuff like that. That's like a big overarching and run through the entire book. And then I go into these more minor edits, like chapter by chapter, and like line by line, getting gradually smaller with every pass, if that makes sense. That's kind of how I write a book.
Who was the main character?
I can't quite hear
Who
that. I'm
was the
sorry.
main character?
What's the main character?
Yes. The Emmeline, correct, is the main character?
She is, yes.
Yes.
She's the main character in the Shadow Weaver books. And she has a lot of friends and some kind of side characters along the way, like Dar, her shadow / best friend. Later on, she meets Lucas, who's a light singer. He can manipulate light the way she can manipulate shadow, and a bunch of other fun people, too.
Oh no, right here.
Just see what I'm saying?
Did she develop her powers, or was she just born with those?
She was born with her power. In this particular story world, a select few people have powers. What happens is there's this comet called the Cerelia Comet that every 25 years it flies over their country, and basically any pregnant mothers in their path, in the path of this comet, their children will be blessed with magic. So it's not necessarily a common thing. It's kind of rare, and certain talents are, as they call it magic powers, they call them talents, are more rare than others. But that's kind of how that happened, and she was born with it, because her mother would happen to be in the path of that comet when it flew over.
When you were in elementary, like either 5th grade, 3rd grade, did you always want to be a writer, or was there something, or how did you start off?
You know, it's funny because I didn't. It took me a long time to figure out I wanted to be a writer, actually. I was a little slow on the uptake there. When I was about your age, guys, I wanted to be everything else. I wanted to be an archaeologist. I wanted to be president for a while. I wanted to be a farmer who would run around the country in a motorhome with the animals tied to the back for a while. Like all kinds of strange things. A Broadway star, all sorts of stuff. None of those actually panned out. I can't sing, but I have a terrible stage fright, so that one didn't work out at all. And I ended up I love the arts and music and literature, so I ended up actually working behind the scenes in arts organizations as an administrator. I worked in marketing for arts organizations, basically, in my day job. But it took me a long time to figure this out. When I was in college, I went to Hampshire College, which is this liberal arts college out in Western Massachusetts, where they don't give you grades, they give you written evaluations of your work instead, which was really cool. And I got to kind of make up my own major. And when I did that, I combined my love of literature, my love of music, and I wrote an opera. Which is not in high demand, which I discovered when I graduated. But in the opera, I didn't even write the words to it that people would sing. I took words from other people. So I still did not have this, it didn't click in my head that I could write the words, even though I was writing the music. And it wasn't until I was in my late 20s when I was commuting to Boston every day, a very long commute on the train, and getting my master's at night and not sleeping very much, that I was stuck on the subway one day. And I don't know if any of you guys have been in the subway in Boston. Probably not, but if you have, you might know. But they kind of just stop between stops and like hang out, which is super annoying. But it was one of these nights that I was trying to get home, and I'm like half awake, and we're stopped between stops, and I can see out of the corner of my eye there's this old unused subway tunnel, and there's this plastic sheeting and a light behind it. It's kind of glowing in this weird, cool way. And I got this idea about writing a book about fairies living in the subway tunnels of Boston. And I was like, if I can write a 2-hour opera, maybe I can write a 300-page novel. I'll give this a whirl. And I did, and I've kind of never looked back. But it took me a little longer than it probably should have to figure out I wanted to be a writer. But once I got into it, I was completely hooked and was like, this is so cool. I get to make up my own world. I get to make the rules. I get to play around with this. This is so awesome. So it's a lot of fun. I highly recommend it.
And are you able to come up with your book covers? Or the publishers come up with the book covers?
I don't have much to do with the book covers. My publisher, and most authors don't either unless they're an illustrator, my publisher will have the covers crafted by somebody else, an artist, and sometimes I get some kind of feedback. They might ask me if there's like a scene that I think would be good for the cover, or if I have any like cover comps, like other covers that I think are kind of like what I have in my head. But generally speaking, your publisher will send you the cover and say, don't you love this? And hopefully you say, yes, I do. Because if you don't, you have very little say. The one exception actually is a recent book that I did. I co-authored it with an illustrator. It's called The Star Shepherd. This just came out in September. And the illustrator actually, sorry, it's a little shiny, so it's foil, so it's a little bright. He did the cover. And because we co-authored it, I actually got to see every single iteration of the cover from start to finish. And because we were partnered up, I got to give him feedback before the publisher did. So that was really cool to see that whole process we need to end, because I never had gotten any input or any insight into it before. So it's kind of an interesting thing, but normally authors don't really have any say in their covers, unless you're an illustrator.
And what advice could you give the students for their writing process, either for the STAR, whenever they're in class, that they could use to help them think of those ideas?
So getting ideas can be tricky, and I know I struggle with this. A lot of writers struggle with getting ideas. But what I found for me has been the most effective way to do that is, in general, refresh your creative well. Like if you are just stalled out trying to find an idea for a project, outside of class, obviously, doing something that is creative or stimulates your mind in other ways can inspire you to find something to write, like dancing or singing or playing sports or going to see a play or acting or going for a walk. cleaning. I get great ideas when I clean. Who knows why that works, but when your mind's also focused, that can help. If you're in class and you're working on a project and you do it right then, that's a little trickier. But I would say what you should do if you're trying to find something to write in class and you have like a time limit, just keep writing. And that could be the hardest thing sometimes is when you have this mental block of like, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to write, you kind of get like frustrated and can't think of anything. Keep putting words on the page. You can revise them later. That's okay. You can't revise a blank page, but you can revise words you put down. So just keep writing. And sometimes that stream of consciousness that can help break through the blockages or give you something, that might inspire you that you didn't expect. So that's what I do if I'm really stuck, and hopefully that might be helpful for you guys.
Thank you. And can you answer one more question? Do we have a friend that wants to ask one more question?
Stand up, Tucker.
Did you ever think about having maybe an origin where Dar was evil?
An origin story? I've thought about origin stories. I haven't written one. I don't think there will be one. But kind of in my head, you find out later on in the book more about Dar and where she came from. She had a sister, and she wasn't necessarily bad originally, but after she passed away, she kind of was floating around in the abyss for a while and got a little bit fixated on revenge, which kind of corrupted her a bit. But she's not a bad person at heart. So, and she genuinely loved Evelyn.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. I know we got a lot of good information. We're so excited. Your new book, you said, was The Star
Shepherd.
The Star Shepherd. Okay,
Yes.
That's awesome. So
It's unrelated to Shadow Weaver, but it's a lot of fun. It's a nice fantasy novel. Yeah.
awesome. So we will definitely get that on our bookshelves.
And if you guys have questions as you're reading Shadow Weaver, and I don't know if they go through you or their teachers, if they want to email me questions later on, I'm happy to answer them about the book. So
Oh, awesome.
feel free to
That's
reach
great.
out. Don't be shy.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thanks so much,
Appreciate
guys.
you.
For reading.
Okay,
Have a good
bye-bye. You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye.
Thanks.